Thank you so much. So yeah, really excited to be here today and to talk to you all about building your international talent strategy. So I'm Ali Shepherd and I'm the head of talent here at Omnipresent. So Omnipresent, we help companies to build the best teams on earth, and that's a key part of our mission. We really believe that global teams are strong teams, but we also know that it can be really, really complicated. So I'm really excited to be partnering with IHR to shed some light on both the benefits, but also the challenges of hiring globally and creating an international talent strategy. So to kick off, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So I come from a kind of traditional recruiting background. I was an agency recruiter for far longer than I'd care to admit before joining a software consultancy, and throughout my career, I've been helping tech companies scale their functions or their teams. Here at Omnipresent, we employ people in 50 different countries around the world, and that's over a total of about 400 people. And we've learned a lot along that journey of international expansion. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some of our learnings with you today. So let's kick off with another poll, which I think Natasha is going to get set up. This will be really helpful just to give a little bit of kind of focus on some of the topics later on. And in the lead up to the event, we received quite a few questions from you all about international talent strategies and approaches. So really keen to understand how many of you are already hiring internationally outside of your kind of country HQ. So we'll give you kind of 30 seconds or so to respond.
Yeah, I can see the numbers still going up, so I'll just give it another 10 seconds or so.
Perfect. In fact, when you see those numbers going up, you can finish it. That'd be awesome. Thank you. There we go. So yes, quite a lot of you are already hiring outside of your headquarters. Couple of no's, so hopefully this will give you some insights as to how you can do that. But yeah, really interesting results. Great to see so many of you already hiring internationally. And yeah, keep your questions coming through so we can just keep optimizing this kind of presentation as we go. Yeah, and hopefully this will give you some kind of further strategies for those who are already on that journey. So we're going to kick off with kind of discussing the 2023 work trends that we are expecting to happen this year, diving into employee sentiment and the state of the current hiring market. We're then going to talk a little bit about accessing a global talent pool. So why is this important? How this can help you stay ahead of competition, and some of the top tips for mapping out your remote talent acquisition plan. Following this, talk a little bit about what to consider when hiring globally and some of those easily avoidable mistakes. And then finally, how to attract and retain the best talent around the world. So that includes offering the relevant benefits and ensuring that you're doing it compliantly as well. So diving into international work trends, Omnipresent recently published a report with into the globalization of teams in conjunction with BBC journalist Lawrence Knight. And I just want to highlight a couple of the really interesting outcomes of that research in order to set the scene on the backdrop of global work and international hiring. So teams are no longer just remote, they're going global. Ambitious companies are realizing that if they can hire remotely, they can hire internationally too. They can bring on the best and smartest people anywhere in the world and take their businesses into new markets with relative ease. The pandemic accelerated a transition to remote and showed us how employees can work effectively online. We're now seeing the shift going one step further. It's not just remote work, but working from anywhere in the world. So the emergence of truly global teams across all industries. So from this, various trends have emerged. So the first is specialized international teams are becoming increasingly popular. We're just in the early stages of this shift to a global way of working. Remote and hybrid teams won't just work in the same city. Instead, they're collaborating across borders and across time zones. And we call this the globalization of teams, and it's already well underway. We also see with this that businesses that hire globally can better tackle the big issues facing the world in 2023. So take COVID-19, for example. Experts worldwide came together to share expertise and develop vaccines, track the new variants, and they did all of this without leaving their home countries amid global travel bans. A new model of work evolved and broke down barriers of distance and geography to foster multilateral collaboration and innovation. Combating global challenges like climate change and data security requires global expertise. These aren't the expertise that you find within 20 or 30 miles of your office. And so those experts shouldn't have to leave their country of choice to do their job. The second big trend that we're seeing is that compliance is becoming more and more under scrutiny by regulators. So last year, some really high profile employee misclassification cases hit the headlines. Uber in September had to pay out a total of $8.4 million to drivers in California. In the same month, Spanish startup Glovo was fined 79 million euros for similar reasons. Regulators are cracking down on employee misclassification. One of the reasons for this is to ensure greater rights and benefits to workers. It's a trend that we expect to continue in 2023. Similarly, as many companies look to downsize their teams amid economic pressures, terminations will also come under greater scrutiny. Leaders who don't prioritize compliance could expose their businesses to fines, reputational damage, and employee dissatisfaction. Ensuring you have a strong partner for compliant employment has never been more important. The third major trend is that global talent pools will help businesses to save money. So as budgets tighten this year, global talent pools can help companies grow more sustainably. Previously, a lot of companies have been constrained to expensive cities, but now companies can hire from top talent from anywhere across the globe. And this can help bring down overall talent acquisition and retention costs and help people in lower income countries to access a wider pool of high-paying jobs, leveling global economies as a whole. But what about on the employee side? So as I mentioned, last year we saw this significant shift in the way we work. The relaxation of COVID-19 restrictions, many experiences returned to a sense of normality. But companies everywhere took the opportunity to revisit how their businesses operated. While some companies opted to go back to pre-pandemic office setups, many chose to embrace new ways of working. The demand for flexible jobs is here to stay. One debate shaped the work narrative in 2022 to stay remote or not. I'm sure we all saw multiple polls on LinkedIn every day as to the future of work. Some companies insisted on returning to the office full time. Many announced their plans to adopt a permanent remote and hybrid policies. These included some of the world's biggest tech organizations: Microsoft, Apple, Google, Spotify, Cisco, many, many more. Have taken either remote or hybrid as their way of working. An employee demand for flexibility and remote working is still on the increase. A great example is Airbnb, who after announcing a work from anywhere policy, saw its career page receive over 800,000 views. The debate surrounding remote work continues, but the evidence is really clear. The demand for flexible work is here. Employees are hungry for flexible job opportunities and jobs that allow them to live and work in anywhere in the globe, to live their fullest lives outside of work. Employees that don't provide this flexibility are set to miss out on this top talent. And the final trend that I want to talk about is that more so than ever before, employee experience is business critical. 2022 showed us that employees know exactly what they want, and if they don't get it, they won't hesitate to go and find a better suited job. Even with all the tech layoffs that we've seen in the recent months, the competition to attract and retain the very best talent remains hot. The employee experience affects the entire employee life cycle from application to offboarding. Recruiters, HR teams, managers, everyone must be mindful of it. And to keep their people happy and engaged, it's important to ensure that teams are aligned to a central mission, equipped with the right tools to exceed, empowered to make decisions, supported through any HR issues, and given plenty of scope for learning and development. These things can really make or break an employee's journey within an organization, and getting them right is business critical. This is especially true for companies building global teams, where creating a sense of belonging is crucial to their success. So now we've talked a little bit about some of the international work trends. I'm going to talk more about accessing that global talent pool. So hopefully you're all here because you understand that there are massive benefits to opening up your hiring to a borderless talent pool. This is a trend we've seen so much in the news recently, including how it can negatively affect companies when they try and mandate employees back into the office full time. Global teams bring many opportunities. Companies often get 100 times the applicants when they open up roles to be remote and to be anywhere. This trend is moving quickly, and employers who are mandating back to office rules risk losing key talent. Global teams can open up a much more diverse hiring pool, and that's something that I think was our highest ranking challenge in that pod at the start, building and attracting, building diverse teams and attracting diverse talent. Building global teams can really, really aid you on that journey, rather than having to access the talent based locally to your office. Omnipresent are living the benefits of this every day. So I mentioned earlier, we're now over 400 people and distributed across 50 different countries worldwide. So we really are the primary users of our product every single day. And I've got a couple more examples here around how borderless hiring has enabled our clients to achieve their goals and scale up at pace. So Halfbrick are a professional game studio. They're based in Brisbane in Australia, and we're experiencing local talent shortages. They needed high quality tech talent who could bring a really specialized skill set and experience to augment and expand their current workforce. The team are finding it harder and harder to source new hires locally with the required technical skills. And then the pandemic hit. The office is shut, and Halfbrick's entire workforce moved online overnight. Having this remote workforce model in operation motivated Halfbrick to adopt a different approach to hiring and expand its reach into the global talent pool. It was a move that instantly guaranteed them access to large volumes of top-class tech professionals located all around the world. Halfbrick now has 25 team members across 17 different countries, all of whom were hired and onboarded in under 2 months under Omnipresent's Employer of Record service. And I'll also talk about Servest. So Servest are a pioneering B Corp in the emerging climate intelligence sector. The business creates AI-powered climate intelligence to empower everyone to adapt with climate change. Building climate intelligence requires highly specialized talent, and that talent is not based within 20 miles of an office. Servest is carving out a new sector to shape the way everyone approaches climate decisions. They needed to keep building their team of highly specialized, world-leading talent, earth scientists, flood monitors, other super technical roles. Being remote first means they can hire globally to find the absolute best talent. And having raised a $30 million Series A, Servest continues to build a global remote first team to create cutting edge climate intelligence. If we continue to only hire within a small geographic region, not only are we missing out on an opportunity to motivate your teams and allow them to work where they're most happy and fulfilled, you're also missing out on the opportunity to tap into a global talent pool. This is so important for companies who want to continue to scale and succeed rapidly in the coming years. The best talent is everywhere, and you're putting yourself at a distinct disadvantage if you are not in a position to access that talent. Global hiring is no longer reserved for large corporations. It's an option for small companies, medium companies, companies of all sizes to unlock the best in class global talent, no matter where they're based. And this is where a trusted employer of record partner can be so, so important. Global hiring, global talent is also a key tool for retention. One of Omnipresent's earliest customers, actually, they had a software engineer who wanted to move from London back to Germany to be closer to his family during COVID. And being able to quickly pivot and hire them compliantly in Germany was a key element in ensuring that they were happy and retained as an employee. Something we see so often, not just with our customers, but also with our own employees here at Omnipresent as well. But as I'm sure everyone who has hired internationally knows, hiring and paying internationally is complex and time-consuming. International hiring is a massive opportunity, but it's certainly not something to be taken lightly. And as you can see here, the rules and regulations vary hugely from country to country. Benefits, holiday, taxation, working week expectations, these are all different depending on where your employee is located. And understanding these nuances is critical to ensuring you can attract, hire, and retain the top talent you need and do it compliantly. And it's critical to be compliant at every stage of the hiring process. Bearing in mind those kind of stats we had early on around government fines of companies that were doing things that weren't so compliant. So I'm not going to go into loads of depth here because there's just so many differences between countries that I could talk about, and that's a whole other kind of presentation, I suppose. But each country and jurisdiction has its own regulations, ranging from compulsory benefits, so like the workplace pension that we have in the UK, to different employment laws, different number of months payments. So in Germany, it's typical to have 13 months pay. We also consider all the other bodies that we need to consider, such as trade unions and collective bargaining agreements, making it extremely complex and time-consuming to do this without the right partner to support you. So from here, we're going to talk a little bit about what this actually looks like in practice. Hopefully, I've set the scene here as to what those trends are and why this is so important. But let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice. So what would you need to keep top of mind when you want to create and scale a global team? So first of all, think about the role that you're hiring for. So you need to identify the real needs of the role, what you're hiring for, the specific skill set that you need, outlining your budget and what you're able to offer, benefits and vacation days. These are things that will vary country to country, and it's really challenging to make a one-size-fits-all across all countries. So ensuring that your role is relevant to the markets that you're looking to hire in. The role might have a different title, for example. So just adjusting it to reflect the market that you're actually looking to hire in is the first step to take. Salary and budgeting. So this is a really contentious subject that we get asked about a lot. Salary benchmarking is really important, is a really important part of the conversation. Ensuring that you're offering a relevant salary for the role can vary significantly by region. So it can be difficult to work out if it's your first time hiring in a new jurisdiction. What I always advise to everyone is to think about your compensation philosophy early in your international hiring journey. Typically, there's kind of three approaches, which are equal pay regardless of location, entirely localized, and then some kind of hybrid approach being the third. But make sure that you're kind of clear on your compensation philosophy really, really early and apply that to all of your international hiring. When we're talking about the hiring and onboarding, once you've found the talent that you're looking for, make sure you hire them compliantly. Again, this is where a trusted employer of record like Omnipresent can come into the picture. This is really the most complex part, and there are lots of regulations to consider. Like I said, examples include those compulsory benefits, right to work, even specific wording in your offer letters and contracts, which vary country to country. We have seen a lot of companies look at contractors as a workaround, but again, there's a big risk of employee misclassification here, and that not being a compliant way to employ people, which can really open you up to a lot of risk and potentially a lot of costly risk as well. Following on from this is the actual onboarding into the team, into the organization. And considering how to do that for a remote employee is very different to how to do that for an office-based employee. Continuing through that employee life cycle, the remote team management, there's lots of elements to this. And again, I'm not going to go into loads of detail here because that's kind of a whole of the presentation. But I will touch on some of the elements we found to be successful at Omnipresent for creating a productive and effective remote working culture as well. So when we're looking at attracting talent, we really need to optimize our job posts to attract the talent that we need, no matter where in the world they're based. So I touched on this in the last slide. You need to identify the needs of the role, what you're looking for, what you're hiring for, what are the specific skills you need, just as you would if you were looking for an office-based employee. You then really need to localize this appropriately. So the role might have a different title. So we take talent, for example. In the UK, we're often called talent partners, talent acquisition managers. In the US, quite often called recruitment, or in other countries called HR. Make sure that you're really localizing your kind of job postings to the location that you're looking to hire in. Think about what you need to legally advertise as well. So we're seeing pay transparency laws coming into force in many countries and many jurisdictions. There's also the need to kind of highlight what you're offering that's beyond the market norms as well. So again, if you're looking at, say, holiday allowance in the UK, 20 days plus bank holidays is the absolute minimum that you must offer for a full-time employee. But if you're offering 20 days in the US, that's a really generous holiday allowance. So make sure you're really highlighting what makes your role and your organization stand out in that jurisdiction particularly. Be super clear. What seems obvious to you might not seem obvious in another location. So again, when we're talking about salaries, in some jurisdictions, it's usual to advertise a monthly salary rather than an annual salary. Sometimes it's net, sometimes it's gross. Just be super clear, over communicate so that expectations align further down the line. And that kind of optimization of those job posts will get you a long way in attracting the right talent and making sure that expectations align throughout the process as well. And the last thing that I really want to talk about is kind of building on that. So how we attract those people and how we retain them throughout as well. So we've got another poll for you here. As we start to think about the benefits of a global team and how to implement one in real life, the employee experience is a real critical factor. If you're currently leading a team, it'd be great to understand a little bit about what aspects of employee experience you're finding most challenging. And again, we'll give you a minute or so just to answer this. And Natasha, just let me know when if those numbers are going up, hopefully.
They are going up. I'll leave it a couple of minutes. Or sorry, I'll leave it a minute or so.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, really, really interested to hear about this one.
Sometimes I've got to digest the whole question and all the responses. Thank you, and then
it's a good one to think about. I think often, your first think on this, actually, when you really deep down think about it, is different to your first kind of gut feel, I suppose. So yeah, everyone, please do take a minute to think.
Give it another 10 seconds. Okay.
Brilliant. Here we go. Okay, so real mixed bag here. So ensuring everyone's aligned to a central mission, I think, is just slightly ahead, but actually not much in it between this, the tools, empowerment, and learning and development. But I think most people are feeling more confident with supporting the team with the HR issues. That's really interesting to see such a mixed bag of kind of challenges that everyone's seeing. So I'll not hone in on one more than the other here as we go through the next few slides. And thanks everyone for participating. So look, I think we all know that the candidate experience and the employee experience is really, really critical. As talent folk, I think we all know if candidates have a poor experience, much more likely that they'll reject an offer or drop out through the process. It's the same for the employee experience, right? Once you've made the decision to be a remote and global team, there's so many important elements to ensuring that your global culture is effective, flexible, and supportive. So I'll talk a few of the things that we keep top of mind at Omnipresent as we continue to scale this fully remote, entirely distributed global team. And hopefully these will be useful for you as well. So the onboarding experience and the training matters so much. Ensuring that you're taking feedback on how you're onboarding people and you keep iterating, you keep improving those processes are essential. What works in an office environment doesn't work in a remote environment. And so keep learning, keep developing, and make sure that someone owns this, that someone really keeps developing those processes. Make sure that you're setting really clear expectations around communication and transparency. So whether that's through the tools that you use and how you use them as a team, team agreements, the rituals that you have, such as stand-ups. So some of the tools that we use every day here are Slack, obviously Zoom, Notion, Monday.com, Jira. We make sure that we document things and we know how we make decisions, and that's shared fairly across the team as well, or appropriately across the team. We hugely promote and celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a kind of core thing to our business. And ensuring that continued engagement via stand-ups, socials, in-person retreats. In the winter season last year, we did regional online socials, from escape rooms to cocktail making and candle making, and lots of other really fun virtual activities to bring people together as a team, but across teams as well, people that you wouldn't normally work with, to make sure that kind of cross-functional communication is still going. And then scaling that remote culture. So as we've grown, we've had to adapt our communication rituals, such as our all hands, to ensure that we're really adding value for such an expensive meeting, 400 odd people on a call for an hour. It's really important that we're getting a lot out of that call. We also have to regularly audit the tools that we're using to make sure they're still the right fit for us. What worked when we were 20 or 30 people certainly doesn't work now that we're 400 plus people. So making sure that we're still using tools and that everyone knows how to use them appropriately as well is really critical. And some final considerations for enhancing the culture within a global remote team. Establishing or adapting your company values for a global team. So your company culture can be seen as an expression of your company values. So whilst your culture is likely to evolve and change as your team grows, having a clear set of values provides a strong foundation and direction that your culture can revolve around. So if you haven't already established your company values, it's really important to do so before you start scaling your team and hiring internationally. I think one thing which is really important to me is that we hire for values alignment rather than culture fit. So culture fit is about hiring people who are similar to us. It doesn't breed diversity and inclusion, but we do expect people to have values that align with our own, and that's really important. So when we're interviewing candidates, we really think about values alignment rather than culture fit. We take a top-down approach to culture. So every team looks to their leaders to see what is and what isn't acceptable behavior. And so it's crucial to instill that culture from the top down. Your most senior people, your senior leadership team, your founders, they must live your values just as much, if not more so, than the most junior members of the team. They need to set that shining example of what your culture should be, and everyone else will follow. Your code of conduct. So your code of conduct should be clearly outlined. It should clearly outline your mission, your vision, your values, as well as your expectations of all members of staff, including your leadership team. For a globally distributed team, it's especially important to highlight the importance of DEI and how colleagues are expected to treat one another. For example, what type of language should they use or avoid, And how can they make sure everyone feels included and respected? Set really clear communication guidelines. I've already mentioned it's really key to define those tools that your team should use to communicate and explain how and when they should be used. Embrace asynchronous work and document everything so that teams can effectively collaborate across time zones and make synchronous communication purposeful and powerful, such as one-to-one meetings with a manager and direct reports. Try and reimagine those those water cooler moments and team building for a virtual environment as well. So some of those kind of social events that I mentioned earlier as well. And finally, really give your teams the freedom they need to define their own cultures. So whilst there is always an overarching company culture, it's also important to recognize that each team works in a different way. What works for your software engineering team might not work for your customer support team. And these people are motivated by different things as well. So giving those teams and departments the freedom to define their own culture and rituals can be really beneficial and really empowering as well. So, an example, your teams might want to approach collaboration or socializing in really distinct ways. Some might prefer a 15-minute daily Zoom stand-up, while others might benefit from a longer weekly team meeting or other kind of communication methods. Some people love a Friday gathering at the end of their working day, while others just like a nice kind of coffee chat with their co-workers during the week. There is no perfect way to do this, and it will depend a little bit on the teams and what works best for them. So really empowering them to make those decisions will really, really assist on this journey. It's also really important to note the kind of compensation. So I've talked a little bit about designing a compensation philosophy that works, but there's also the benefits element that you need to think about for global teams. They're a really critical part of your employee value proposition. So not only does a great benefits package attract the top talent to your organization, but it's really critical to help retain them as well. So I guess the one thing we all know, though, it can be really complicated when you're hiring in more than one country because local regulations vary so much. Local laws will dictate minimum benefits you must offer an employee, like I mentioned earlier, the workplace pension in the UK, while local customs determine what a candidate might expect. So as an example, in Brazil, there's no legal requirement for employers to provide health insurance, but it's extremely common practice. Therefore, employees in Brazil have come to expect it as a standard benefit. Again, working with an EOR would be able to kind of help you navigate this really, really complex world of benefits globally as well. So we've touched on quite a lot today, and a lot of the things you can do to optimize for a global team. And I just wanted to touch on a few of the kind of key mistakes to watch out for. Compliance. I know we've covered this today quite a few times, but I cannot tell you enough times how much of an important factor it is for creating successfully creating a flexible team. It's imperative to work with a trusted partner when you're hiring remotely to ensure you're not misclassifying employees or opening yourself up to completely unnecessary risk. Onboarding. So the onboarding process is really key for ensuring your team is on the same page when it comes to flexible working. Outlining expectations up front, training people on the expected tools used and ways of working, designing your team agreements. It will pay dividends in the long run by getting these things right and keep iterating on them as well, and make sure that they're still working for you as your kind of team grows and evolves as well. And optimizing for a remote team, be intentional about this. Don't just try and recreate the office online. It won't work. You need to kind of be really intentional about how you're going to work in this global distributed environment, and how you can still create that kind of sense of belonging through online activities and building trust across your teams and employees as well. So in summary, as we've seen throughout this presentation, flexible work, it's here and it's here to stay. It's a huge, huge opportunity, but it's also not one to be taken, it's certainly one to be taken carefully. there's extreme risks about not being compliant. So make sure that you're also taking into account the onboarding experience for remote employees, lead into the tools and the ways of working to build an effective team culture. And that's it from me.